So this idea started with this pendant. I make a ton of pendants and you can find those and my rings on my Etsy shop, but today I wanted to work on something that's a little bit different than the standard design that I've been working with. I was inspired by some cutting boards that I saw online and I wanted to sort of emulate this style into a pendant, so this pendant is what I ended up with. I made these by gluing up a bunch of different slices of wood, and then taking small slices of those and staggering them when I glue them. Once those are all glued up, you get a little piece like this, and you can cross cut them to get your little pendant. The only thing that you really need to do after this is adding hardware and a backer, and you're pretty much good to go. I posted these to a makerspace Discord that I'm a part of to get some hearts and sparkles that I'm so fond of, and I was also told that they are Minecraft core, but in a good way of course, and that got me thinking. There's literally so much that I could do with this technique. I could make a Minecraft block, but I'm not gonna. I could do the Mona Lisa at some point maybe, but I really like skulls, so for this one I'm gonna do a skull. First things first, I made the initial drawing in Krita, and you can see using these lines how this is going to be made up of a bunch of different slices from separate billets of stacked wood. And here you can see the grid that I made to output my cut list and to get an idea of exactly how big each size needs to be. And I have to make 158 of these cuts, so let's get to work on the bandsaw. Now I sped through and cut out a ton of the cutting because this entire process of cutting these slices took several days, I think maybe 4 days, but this is what you get at the end. We've got all of our color-coded stuff. However, the bandsaw doesn't give a perfect cut, so I designed this drum sander. And then next I went over to the makerspace and I cut out all the parts for it on their CNC. After assembling all of the pieces of the drum sander, I had to level the drum to the actual bed. So I used a little block with sandpaper to level the drum, and then I was able to put sandpaper on the drum and start drum sanding all of these small pieces. The actual drum sanding process is pretty rinse and repeat. I would essentially take all of the 2mm pieces and do one side, then I would flip them and do the other side at a slightly lower depth so I could get as close to 2mm as possible, and then I did the exact same for the 4mm, 6mm, 8mm, so on. After the first initial cuts, I got a lot more confident in the drum sander's ability, and I started doing 3 pieces at a time, which ended up cutting my workload down by a lot. You can see here how I fixtured the wood pieces to this little block. Essentially, I just used 3 pieces of double-sided tape. Then I would just pop them off, measure them, make sure that they're within about 1/10 of a millimeter of where I needed them, and then I would fixture some new pieces and get back to drum sanding. The only real issues that I had in this step were with the East Indian rosewood. It's a really dense and gummy wood, so it likes to kind of gum up and get stuck in the sandpaper. And I definitely could have mitigated this a little bit by taking lighter passes with it, but once I had the bed of the drum sander where I wanted it to be, I didn't want to move it because I wanted to ensure the exact same cut every single time. Finally, after a few more days, I got all the drum sanding done, and I could just kind of sit down and chill out and just stack all these pieces of wood together. Seeing all these stacked up and laid out made me really happy because I knew even if the project turned out bad, I would at least be able to make a really cool cutting board. Regardless, now it is time to get all these glued up. After the glue up, I went ahead and I planed one side of all of the different billets, and this is just so that they don't rock around in the bandsaw when I'm making small slices, because I want them to be as stable as possible and I want as perfect slices as I can get. Now that I have one side faced, we can head back over to the bandsaw and make our small slices. The next thing we're going to be doing is drum sanding these slices down to 1mm thick. You can see me putting markings on them, and that's essentially so that as I'm going down in depth and I'm drum sanding it down, I know once every single piece has been faced. If it hasn't and there's low spots, I'll still see those pencil marks. Now that everything is properly thickness, it is time to do a glue up. The method here is essentially to get them lined up as closely as possible and then douse the ever-loving hell out of them with CA glue. Now this is super thin CA glue, which is perfect for this application because it seeps into every little crack using capillary action. And this is exactly what we want, because if there's any small holes or chips or cracks in the wood, those will get filled with glue and it will stabilize the whole piece. This is also my first time throughout the whole process actually being able to see the design, and I am thrilled. Here you see me gluing the top and the bottom as well. Like I said, you have to absolutely douse this thing. Off camera, I squared everything up and added an ebony frame around the whole piece. This will stabilize everything, and it also looks very nice in the end. Now we are finally on to our last bandsaw job, which is cutting out the completed pendant slices. There's no audio of me here, but when I saw this, I was smiling ear to ear. Here you see me gluing on the ebony backer for the whole piece. It essentially does the exact same as the frame, where it just stabilizes everything and it looks very nice. Next, we're going to go over to the disc sander and we're just going to clean up all the edges. With all of the edges sanded, now it is time to drum sand the top face. I'm leaving this in to kind of show you why I didn't want to go through the trouble of adjusting the drum sander so much, because it is kind of a pain in the ass. I need to redesign it, and I plan on making a bigger one, so I'll probably do it then. For this step, I'm using 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm taking off about 1/10 of a millimeter with every single pass until I get where I want it. now it is time for everybody's favorite operation, hand sanding. And yeah, these things did not want to unstick. Before we get into hand sanding though, I could not resist the urge to put some oil on this just so I could see the colors of the wood. And just look at that, like it is exactly what I wanted. It looks so freaking cool. But we are not done just yet. We still have a decent bit of hand sanding to go. Under the sandpaper, I have a piece of plexiglass because it's a nice flat surface, but don't ask because I'm not going to pull off the plastic. Here you see me sanding the face and the back, and then I'm going to move on to the sides, the top, and the bottom, and then I'm going to put chamfers on the whole piece so there's no sharp edges poking you while you're wearing it. Then I put a coat of oil on it and made sure everything was all nice and smooth. And a couple of things. If you see any stray hairs in this video, could be from this guy, but it's probably from this guy. The second thing is you can see all these pore holes from the Padauk and the East Indian rosewood. So what we need to do is we need to add another coat of CA on top of that, let it dry, and then sand it down so that all of those holes are filled. After that sanding, you can see that most of those holes are gone, but I actually did have to go back after the video and do one more sanding to get rid of all of them. Now to finish everything up, we are adding the hardware. I drilled the hole off camera because my drill press is actually underneath my desk and I did not want to record down there because it's a mess. Maybe it's not as bad as the top of my desk. I do keep it clean, but after a project it looks like an I-Spy book. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. This is my first time ever making anything like this out of wood, and it's my first time making a YouTube video, so I really hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, leave a like, do all the YouTube stuff. And if you watched all the way through this and you do really want to get yourself one of these pendants, I will leave a link to my Etsy shop below and a direct link to the listing. I will also be leaving a discount code on screen for you to use to get 30% off. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time I make something.